Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Stories video. Today we're diving into a fascinating and chilling topic, terrifying true Reddit stories. These stories are all verified, and let me warn you, some are deeply unsettling. I'm especially excited about this one because true stories have a unique way of drawing us in. Whether you're studying, relaxing, trying to sleep, or just looking for some entertainment, this video is perfect for any situation. Before we jump into these spine-tingling stories, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We're working toward the goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers, so your support would mean the world to us. All right, without further ado, let's get into some terrifying true Reddit stories. Creepy stalker. This had happened to me about 6 years ago. I was doing my usual routine of walking around town for a few hours, as I enjoyed walking, and I was getting my steps in for the day. I'd always start from my house, walk around town for a few hours, then turn around and head back home. I'd always go walking around noon or an hour or two later at the latest. My walks would start at 11 a.m. at the earliest or 2 p.m. at the latest. This day in particular, I had a bunch of things to do, so I was unable to go out walking before noon. I'd eventually finished up everything that I needed to do, but it was already in the mid to late afternoon. I checked the time, and it was almost 3 p.m. I debated whether or not if I should go walking or if I should go tomorrow instead, since I had nothing going on the next day. I said fuck it and decided to go for my walk, but I told myself that I had to cut it short since I didn't want to be out after sunset since it would get pretty cold at night. I got dressed and headed out to get my walk in for the day. Fast forward almost 3 hours later, I looked at my phone to check the time, saw that it was almost 6 p.m., and started to make my way back home. I had a bit of a problem, which was I was about 6 miles away from my house, and it would take me about an hour and a half or more to get there. The sun had fully gone down, and there was only a faint orange glow in the sky from it. The night sky had begun to take over, and the air was turning cold. I began to make my way home and had picked up the pace as I didn't want to be outside when it was cold. I was about 2 miles away from my home and thought I was in the clear when I was wrong. I passed by a convenience store when I noticed a man sitting on the side of the building smoking a cigarette. The man looked to be in his early to mid-30s, wore a black hoodie, black pants, and black shoes. I saw him turn his head towards me, and he gave me a blank stare. I thought nothing of it and just ignored it. I turned around a few moments later and saw he had gotten up from his spot and began walking the same direction I was going. I kept checking behind me often to see if he would turn down another street, but he never did. After several minutes of him walking the same way as me, I hear the man start yelling, "Hey." He then started saying other stuff to try to get my attention, which I ignored. Right after that, I heard him yell, "What the fuck," at me in an angry tone. I sped up and didn't dare to look back at that point. I texted my dad and explained that there's some creepy guy following me and how he was yelling at me. My dad replies asking me how far I am, and I say about less than a mile away. He replies back that to keep walking, don't worry, and that he'll come and get me in the next few minutes. I turned behind me to see if he's still following as he stopped yelling, and he was, unfortunately. I was 3/4 of a mile away from my house, and I thought about just running there. At the same time, I didn't want this guy to follow me and find out where I lived. I was about to turn down the street I lived at when something told me not to. I texted my dad and told him I passed the street and to go the other way, which he replied with, "Okay." I kept going forward, passing the street, when all of a sudden I heard some kind of frantic noise. I turned around only to see, to my horror, that the guy put his hood up and was sprinting straight towards me. Without hesitation, I bolted straight ahead and ran across the street. I kept running for what felt like hours until I saw a pair of headlights coming down the street. I waved my arms like a madman, hoping they would see me. Thankfully, they did, and the car stopped. I got closer and saw it was my dad. I looked behind me only to see that the man who was chasing me had somehow disappeared. I got in the car and explained everything to him. He said that he was going to drive down the street to see if he could find the man and would confront him. We drove down the street only to see nobody walking on the sidewalk or hiding behind the bushes. There was no sign of anyone being out as the streets were empty. From that day on, I never go out walking after 2 p.m., and I since then carry a pocket knife with me whenever I go out walking for my own safety and protection. I don't know what that man would have done to me had he caught me, and I don't think I ever want to know. I dodged being murdered by my psychotic roommate just by a hair. I'm a 36-year-old female in Sweden. I have worked in mental health care for the last 18 years, mainly with people with psychotic illnesses like schizophrenia. I was working at a group home for 9 years and were very close with my coworkers there, especially two females. The last few years I worked there, another female started working there. Let's call her M, and the four of us grew very close. She was very timid, shy, friendly, and we got along well. She was, however, often on long-term sick leave because of her own mental health issues, so we didn't meet much at work. But she always showed up at our after-work dinners, so we continued to stay in touch, even when she wasn't well enough to work full-time. She told us that she had a history of schizophrenia herself, just like the patients we were treating, but that she was medicated and hadn't had any psychotic episodes for years. Since I have an education in psychiatry and a long experience with schizophrenia, I have no judgment towards people suffering from the illness, and it didn't bother me being friends with someone who had a diagnosis like that. And even after what I will tell you, I still feel the same way. In the summer of 2023, I had moved on to work at a new place, also within mental health, but this time forensic psychiatry, like a halfway house for mentally ill murderers, etc. The four of us stayed in touch and still met every now and then for dinner parties. M told us that she had been evicted from her apartment because of an incident where she had accidentally entered her neighbor's apartment in the middle of the night. She told us that in the huge apartment complex, the doors all look exactly the same, and that she simply walked in the wrong door by accident, and that the neighbors had created a scene out of pure drama and reported her to the police. I somehow felt that while that sounded out of proportion to evict someone, just from that, perhaps the landlord took that kind of action because he judged her based on her medical history, and I felt bad for her. I questioned her if something else happened, and she claimed that it didn't, and that this was the full story. In Sweden, it's very difficult to get a contract for an apartment when you have gotten evicted. You pretty much get blacklisted. M asked me if she could move in with me. Since she was literally on the street, literally homeless, I said, "Of course you can." I've always gotten myself into uncomfortable situations by saying yes instead of thinking about myself, and I had no idea how severe this situation would get when I said yes to M. I live in a pretty small apartment. It's one bedroom that pretty much only fits a bed and a desk, a living room that fits a couch and a TV, no room for an extra bed, a small kitchen and a small bathroom. I have two cats. We decided that M was going to live in the living room, and I offered her to throw my couch out so she could have a bed there. But she said that she was fine with sleeping on the couch since it's comfortable enough. I insisted on giving her a bed, but she declined. There's a door between the living room and bedroom, but between the living room and hallway, there's just an open arch, so she wouldn't have total privacy. I hung up a thick velvet curtain covering the arch, so it at least gave her the sense of a door and more privacy than nothing. There's another door from my bedroom to my kitchen, so I have two doors to my bedroom. I have to have one of them open at night since my cats wants to go in and out. And they also have their litter boxes in the bathroom and food and water in the kitchen. I naturally kept the kitchen door open and not the living room door, since that's where M lived and we wanted to keep our privacy somehow. She wasn't working at this time because she was on one of her long-term sick leaves, while I was working shifts, so sometimes I had to get up at 6 a.m. and sometimes I didn't get home till like 11 p.m. I have really severe insomnia and need to combine zolpidem, Ambien, Stilnoct, with Lergigan, promethazine, and even with this I still wake up easily. I told her that I would appreciate if she could try to stay quiet those nights when I have to get up at 6 a.m. But that it's fine if she's loud when I'm off work or when I do the evening shifts. She was a heavy smoker and a coffee drinker, so I bought her a coffee machine. Yeah, I know, I'm a weirdo who don't drink coffee very often, so I didn't have one, to make her enjoy her living situation more. The coffee machine in the sink is placed right outside my bedroom door. The kitchen is very small. So the first night together, I had to get up at 6 for my shift. As usual, I had a hard time falling asleep. M had been up several times that night to go out to smoke, and I woke up every time. At 5 a.m., she started making coffee, and since it's literally outside my bedroom door, I got wide awake from the sounds of it. I asked her in the nicest way possible why she was up this early, asking if she had any plans today. I mean, she's on sick leave. Why not sleep at 5 a.m. if you can? And she just said that she couldn't sleep. I said, I'm sorry. I would just appreciate if you could wait with making the coffee till 6 a.m. since I really need this last hour of sleep because of work. Adding to why I need my sleep is that I have epilepsy that gets really bad when I don't get enough sleep. I usually get a lot of seizures when I don't get at least 4 hours of sleep. I knew that I would probably get seizures at work now, meaning that this day would be both stressful and potentially dangerous for me, since there's a huge risk that I fall and hurt myself. And it's not a good thing to get cramps and seizures among mentally unstable criminal clients who you are supposed to care for. I know that it's not an ideal situation to work in that field with my condition, and I can inform you all that I did quit after only 6 months. She said that she really wanted coffee with her cigarettes, but that she would try to wait the next time I have to work. I accepted it and went on with my day. But things didn't get better. She continued to wake me up early in the morning and through the nights, and continued to promise to stop, but insisted that she really wanted coffee with her cigarettes. I suggested making the coffee the night before, or drinking iced coffee or Coke instead, but she didn't want that. I may add that she demanded for me to be silent at 10 p.m., because that's when she wanted to sleep, and I respected that. She used to get these moments of binge eating where she would empty my fridge and pantry from everything I had. I remember this one time when I had bought a big loaf of bread, and she texted me 30 minutes after I left the apartment saying, "Hey, I'm sorry I ate your loaf of bread. I will buy it back once I get money." Like an entire loaf of bread in 30 minutes. I had told her when she moved in to feel at home, and what's mine is yours, so I couldn't really get mad. But it started to annoy me for two reasons. It was getting kind of expensive, since it was such huge amounts, and it was always in inconvenient times of the day, like after an evening shift when the store was closed, and I came home hungry and she had emptied the kitchen from everything I had bought the same day. M had long black hair that was everywhere, all over the sink, the floor, the bathtub. I'm no clean freak, but I think anyone could understand that this isn't the nicest thing to step in or see everywhere in your house. She also left her fingernails and toenails on the bathroom floor. It was also pee drops on the toilet seat every time she had been to the toilet. I saw a silverfish on my bathroom floor, never ever seen one before, and they eat hair and skin and nails, so I figured this fella probably enjoyed life because of the new dirty condition my bot room was in. At first I didn't want to say it straight out because I thought it would hurt her, and I didn't want to make her uncomfortable, so I just put a broom and shovel in the bathroom to imply that we needed to sweep the floor more often. This didn't seem to work, so after a while I told her in the nicest way possible, with a smile on my face, "Do you think we could try to clean the floor in the bathroom more often? We tend to lose some hair when we brush it, and I'm afraid we may get pests. I saw a silverfish the other day and I don't want it to get worse." I always made sure to say we instead of you so she wouldn't feel attacked. She promised to think about it, but nothing changed. I started dating a guy and was head over heels for him. He was also in a roommate situation, so we had a tough time getting any alone time. I asked him if there's any chance that we could get one night to ourselves every now and then in the apartment, and that she, of course, would get the apartment to herself as well. She didn't like the idea and claimed that she had nowhere to go, no friends or family. Now I wasn't asking her to leave for 24 hours, just a few hours so we could just get some quality time together. She could just go to the library or take a walk or whatever. I was at work for 8 to 10 hours, 5 days a week, so she got a lot herself. One of our old coworkers realized that this was really tearing at my mood, to never get any time for myself, and I started feeling really suffocated. She offered that M could stay the night at her place. After all, they were friends too. M said she didn't want to bother her, but we told her that she didn't. They're friends, she's more than welcome, and I really just want one night to myself and my guy. I didn't understand why she made such a big deal over leaving me in the apartment for just one night. She eventually accepted and spent the night there, and I spent the night away the next week so she could get more alone time too. When I came home the next morning from my night away, I saw that my cat's water bowl was completely dried out. There was no spill on the floor, and it looked like it had been wiped out with a towel or paper. I had filled it to the brim just the night before. I asked her how this was possible, and she said that the cats must have tipped it out. But there was nothing on the floor, like I said. My cats are overly social and usually cuddle up with strangers after just a few minutes. I noticed that the cats withdrew from her more and more over time, and the last couple of weeks they never left my bedroom except from when they ate or used the litter box. It seemed like they were scared of her, which I couldn't figure out since she was so timid. I had this old saucepan from the 60s that meant a lot to me. You probably wonder how a saucepan can mean a lot to someone, but it was my grandmother's, and it's the only thing I have that belongs to her. My mother used to cook for me with it when I was little, so it has a great nostalgic value to me. She burnt it one day and made no attempt to clean it. She just left it on the stove and went out to smoke. I found it ruined and cried. She didn't even say I'm sorry. She also broke dishes several times and didn't bother to replace them or apologize. This added to my frustration with her naturally. It had been probably gone 2 months now, and she kept waking me up at night, kept binge eating my food, never cleaned, never left the house, scared my cats and ruined my things. I realized she stole my prescripted sleeping pills. Lots of them as well, and I only get one per night, not more or less. And as you already know, I really need them. I had 20 of them in nightstand when I left for work, and when I came home they were gone. She denied, which is pretty hilarious since no one else could have been there. My frustration was getting heavy. The summer heat was strong and I felt locked up in my tiny bedroom with my 2 cats, never getting any time to myself, never any alone time with the guy I was dating, except for once every 14th day. My apartment was messy and she was stealing from me, etc. Out of nowhere, my old elementary school classmate texted me on Facebook asking me how I know M. He had seen that I had posted on Facebook that we were roommates now. I told him that we were old coworkers and that she needed a place to stay because she got evicted. He said, I know. Do you know why she was evicted? Yeah, she accidentally went into her neighbor's apartment. He said, that's not the full story. She broke in and snuck up to their sleeping baby with a knife in her hand, but luckily the father woke up and wrestled her down and managed to save the baby. I felt sick to my stomach. Could this be true? It would certainly explain why she was evicted, but it just sounded so horrible and she is such a timid, nice girl. I had so many questions. But my friend had the full police report. Apparently the couple that M had broken into was his ex-girlfriend and her family. It seemed that M had a psychosis during the break-in, but those parts weren't public. It was however clear to me that she had been lying to me about what had happened and about how long she had been mentally stable. I started getting quite paranoid now, and I was already frustrated with everything and really wanted her to move out. We did, however, have a contract that she had 30 days notice. I knew that if I asked her in a harsh way, it would mean 30 days of chaos until she moves out, so I wanted to handle this as nicely as I could. I started looking for cheap hostels for her that I could suggest to her so she wouldn't be on the streets. I sat down with her and told her that I love living with her, and I feel really horrible for this, but I just miss my alone time and that the apartment is too small for 2 people. I said it wasn't personal and that I wouldn't want to live with anyone right now and that I wished it would have worked out and that I am really sorry and hope we will remain friends. She looked crushed and said that it wasn't possible. I showed her the hostel I found and said that I understood that it wasn't the ultimate situation, but I really needed her to move out because I felt suffocated, and also the summer heat was making it tough to always have the door to the bedroom closed, and that it was tough for me to not get my sleep, etc. She said, okay, she was going to try to move out, but not until 30 days had passed, and I said, of course. The first night after our talk, she got up and made her coffee at 2:30 a.m. I nearly had a mental breakdown. I was going to get up at 6 and couldn't go back to sleep. I asked her in the morning for probably the 10th time to not make coffee till I get up, but she didn't even answer me. She just sat in the sofa and stared out the window. I said, M, and she kept staring. I was freaked out but left for work. She kept being weird, kept making a mess, kept waking me up, kept eating my food. And all I could think about was the incident with her and the baby and the knife. I eventually got so pissed off about being woken up by the coffee maker, so I plugged it out and stored it in my attic, which she had no access to. It may be childish, but I was getting so tired at this moment. My sleeping pills were stolen, and I was starting to feel like Edward Norton in the beginning of Fight Club. Well, the next night I woke up at 4 a.m. by her making coffee in a saucepan. Not my grandmother's saucepan. That one was ruined. I tried talking to her again, explaining the situation, but she just stared and didn't reply. Me being frustrated and on the tipping point took the saucepan and stored it in the attic as well. I know, but I was going crazy and just wanted her to stop with these nightly coffee routines and get the hint. The third night, I had the guy I was dating sleeping at our place because I was getting really paranoid now over her weird behavior. Not speaking with me, just staring into space. I woke up from my very light snooze by him poking me. He whispered, "Look." In the doorway, M was just standing silently, staring at us. This was like a scene from a horror movie with her long black hair over her face. I kid you not. I didn't say anything at first because I wanted to know if she just stood there for a second doing something by the door. But I realized after a while that she was actually just standing still staring at us. It reminded me of the ending of Paranormal Activity when Katie just stares at Micah in the final scene. So I sat up and said, "What are you doing?" But before I could finish the sentence, she just slammed the door shut, and I heard the sound of something metal falling on the floor and her running into the living room. I yelled out, "You need to leave," and started crying hysterically because this was turning into a fucking nightmare. Of course, I didn't go back to sleep, and I was really happy that I had company that night. I just kept asking myself, had she done this before? Stared at me in my sleep? The next day when I got out of bed, I opened the door that she had slammed shut and saw a kitchen knife on the floor. So that was the metal sound I had heard before she ran off. I took all my knives and locked in the attic as well. I then asked a friend of mine to come to my house and be here when I tell her that she has to move out immediately, that I can't wait 30 days, 27 days. During the conversation, I really tried to stay calm. I know she has a mental illness. I know she means no harm. Even though I was so frustrated I couldn't hate her, I was mostly scared and tired. She, however, didn't even answer when I talked to her. She just kept staring out the window. She left the apartment and sent me a text instead saying that I was disrespectful for bringing a friend over to her place. Nighttime came, and I thought this would be a quiet night finally. No coffee maker or saucepans. But at 3 a.m., I woke up by her burning dry coffee powder in a frying pan. At this moment, I just felt terrified of her. Her face was dead, her eyes were black. I suspected that she had gone into a psychosis. I stopped the fire, and she just ran off to the living room in silence. I knew she had an appointment with her psychiatrist the next day, and while she was away, I packed all her things. I then sent her a text telling her that she needs to pick them up and give me my keys back, and that I will give her money for a hostel the upcoming 26 days. She didn't reply. The guy I was seeing came to keep me company in case she would fight about it. She didn't. She left the keys without looking at us and left. Our coworkers, who were friends with us both, told me that she moved in with a guy that she was dating, and she stayed there for a few weeks till she somehow, amazingly, got an apartment of her own. She started working again, and I was really happy to hear this. She seemed to do well. Then in January of this year, one of our old coworkers told me that Mehad called her and told her that everything must burn, that she has a baby that she must save, and other delusional stuff. She had called 112, Swedish emergency number, like 911, about this, but they hadn't taken it seriously. M had then proceeded to burn her entire apartment down because the voices in her head was telling her that she has to burn everything to save her friends and family. Her neighbors had tried to rescue her from the fire, but she had fought them off and ran back in and poured liquor on the fire to make it burn more. She was arrested and sentenced last week for aggravated arson. She will serve her time in a mental institution prison for a long time, possibly forever. What's ironic is that she will probably be in the facility where I used to work and end up where she used to work herself. My old coworker was a witness at the trial, and apparently she had stopped taking her medication, Abilify, because she thought that it made her feel numb, and she thought she was stable enough to function without it. Apparently not. She had also stopped taking her medication the last few weeks when she stayed at my house. So when she stared blankly into space, she was going into psychosis. When she stared at me with the knife in her hand. When she burnt the frying pan that last night. It's disturbing to think about what would have happened to me and my cats if she would have stayed, or if I would have been a heavy sleeper. I also think about what would have happened to that baby that she snuck into before she was evicted. And yeah, I know it's crazy that I didn't just throw her out by then. It was complicated. The reason why I haven't been able to talk about it with my friends is because they sympathize with her and have minimized my experience. And they think that I make a bigger deal out if it than I believe it has been. I sort of understand it since they have never seen that darkness in her eyes that I saw those last couple of days. Update May 16th. I just remembered some other things that I wanted to add to the post. There were several times when I was going to work early in the morning that she occupied the bathroom by taking long baths. I patiently tried to wait till last minute before knocking and asking her if she could get up and get back in after I had gotten ready and left for work. Just another thing that added to my frustration. I fell really ill one time when she was staying here. I didn't know at the time what it was, but I woke up early in the morning one day feeling very nauseated. On my way to the bathroom, I literally shit myself and threw up at the same time. It takes like 10 seconds to get to the bathroom, so you can imagine how bad it was when I didn't even make it LMAO. I had a really high fever and kept throwing up and shitting myself all morning, and anyone who has been this ill would understand that you want the bathroom to yourself. Actually, I think it's pretty understandable that you'd want to be completely alone when you are this ill. My head was spinning, and I was nearly hallucinating from the high fevers. One random thing I laugh about today is that it was Eurovision week, and for some reason the flute solo from Moldova song was stuck on repeat in my head while I was in and out of fever dreams. I have a hard time listening to it today, haha. Anyway, working in healthcare, I also have a natural instinct of not wanting to spread infections. So my first thought was that besides wanting to be alone, I didn't want to risk giving whatever this was to M. So I begged her the moment I noticed I was ill to please leave for her own sake. I could barely speak because it made me throw up that easily. Our friend in common had asked her to water her plants that week, so she had the keys to her place and could have been alone there. M refused to leave, and I swear if I had the energy to slip out of the window and fall to my death, I would have. But I couldn't. I was half sitting, half laying on the toilet with a bucket in my lap, my head sort of resting in the bucket of puke because I couldn't hold it up with the high fever, and I just begged through whispers for her to leave so she wouldn't be ill too. I told her, "What if you get sick soon too? We can't share the toilet. I will be here all day. You should go to her place before it's too late, please." Eventually she left, pissed at me. It turned out I had a severe case of food poisoning, and I was well again after 2 days. But my God, the fact that she refused to leave is something I felt I had to add to the story, because it made me so frustrated too. I also went through our conversations and saw me asking her how long the door had been closed. That reminded that she used to shut my cats inside my bedroom while I was away at work or wherever, so they couldn't eat, drink, or use the litter boxes. She claimed she just recently closed it because she was trying to sleep. But I remember she did it in the middle of the day one time the last few days too. Airbnb owner acted weird. I left when I saw a chair with ropes in my bedroom. Was watching a YouTube video where the YouTuber tells let's not meet stories of weird encounters with landlords or in hostels. Reminded me of this one that happened to me a few months ago. Disclaimer, that might not be as scary as other stories in this subreddit, but watching those videos made me paranoid, which is why I decided to leave that Airbnb rather than risk being the victim in a true crime story. As I said, this happened a few months ago, if I remember correctly in January or February 2024. I was visiting family in southern France and did not want to stay at their place even if they offered, for personal reasons which I won't share here. Note that I visit them quite often and usually last minute, so I would never book the same place, and I would sometimes book a hotel room, which was more expensive but better for me, as I don't necessarily want to socialize with the hosts. Even when I would book Airbnbs, I would always search flats or studio flats and not a room in a flat house where other people live, as I want to be on my own, so this is an important criteria for me. So I booked this Airbnb within walking distance to where my family members stay, and it looks very nice on paper. I think it was marketed as a house or ground floor flat with access to a yard and a garden. It was probably one of the cheaper options. I don't remember for sure, but I wasn't going there for leisure or planning to have a very nice place for myself to have enjoyable holidays, if that makes sense. So I really wanted something for convenience and wouldn't pay extra for any kind of luxury. There were not a lot of reviews, but the few ones were pretty positive. So I go to that place with my suitcase, waiting in front of the house. I contact the landlord who should give me the keys, but he's late. I spent at least 1 hour waiting outside, and I'm trying to be patient, realizing at least the neighborhood is pretty nice and seems safe, even if I need to walk through areas that are slightly dodgy to get there from where my relatives stay. The landlord finally arrives. He seems like a good man and apologizes profusely, saying he was in another town visiting his cousin or friends, and time flew by. First red flag, he says they were drinking and didn't have time to sober up, so he had to speed on the highway on his motorbike while being tipsy drunk. He stops and asks me half-jokingly not to say that in my review. I get a bit serious and tell him he shouldn't drink and drive, but he says he really didn't want to make me wait further. I tell him I won't flag that in my review. Spoiler alert, I will, but didn't want to start off on the wrong foot. The guy's nice otherwise and seems trustworthy, very chatty and open to socializing, and frankly, I was just happy I could finally get in and drop my stuff. Second red flag is when he tells me I will be living in a small flat adjacent to the bigger house he lives in, but I shouldn't worry because I would have my own place, own bathroom, own kitchen, etc. I don't like that too much, but I actually think it might be good because I am not super comfortable being on my own in a ground floor accommodation, knowing anyone can get into the yard and access the front door. Again, I'm paranoid. So knowing that someone I know is close by in case something happens gives me a sense of safety. God, was I wrong? He shows me around, all seems okay. It's pretty old, but as I said, I wasn't looking for a luxury stay. The part where I would stay is on a lower level than street level. Not exactly like a basement because there is access to a garden, but I need to walk down a set of stairs outside and get into flat through the backyard. This shows mostly when I'm in the bedroom, as I see through the windows that it's clearly at a lower level. Next red, or rather yellow flag, is when he shows me a door close to the bedroom, which is the connecting door between my part and his house. I was kind of expecting that, but thought he might need to at least cross the yard or access through the front door to get into my part of the house. He says this door stays closed and it's locked anyway, not as a warning for me not to try to open it, but more like, you'll notice there is this door. It's useless for you, and what's beyond it is not part of what you're renting. We chat a little bit, too long for my taste because I was tired and also still annoyed at his lateness and not in the mood to socialize. He gives me his phone number because Airbnb chat feature is not good. It's easier to use WhatsApp. And then he leaves. I start to settle down, open my suitcase, and get changed before leaving to visit the family. I then go back to the place in the evening and decide to have a shower. If I remember correctly, what I'm saying next happened before I took a shower because I remember locking the bathroom door, which I never do when I know I'm on my own. And I recall being quite anxious when taking the shower. So biggest red flag before the last drop. I'm sitting on the bed and hear a knock and someone saying my name. 2 seconds later, before I get the chance to answer or even understand where the noise comes from, I hear keys turning in a lock and a door opening. As you might have guessed, it's the connecting door next to the bedroom. The guy enters and says he can't find his phone and if he might have left it downstairs. I'm a bit shocked, probably because if he had come 10 minutes later, I would have probably been naked, ready to take a shower, or maybe walking around in a towel since I'm supposedly alone. I know it might sound like I'm a pussy, but keep in mind I'm a relatively young woman alone in a house with a man in his 40s or 50s who has control over when he can get into my place at any time. I stay polite and try to tell him that no, I haven't seen his phone. I would have noticed there's literally nothing except my open suitcase on a couch in the bedroom. He still gets in, speaking a lot and very fast while I'm sitting there, not fully realizing what's happening and not having a chance to tell him to leave. He looks around the flat and obviously doesn't find the phone. Then he says sorry and probably asks if everything is fine, if I had dinner or something like that, and then leaves again. At that point, I'm really wondering if I should stay or not, since I know you get refunded only if you cancel 2 nights in advance. I just thought I would lose the money for the night that has started. It was already after 11 p.m. And the following one, knowing I had booked at least 4 nights. I really needed to take a shower, but questioning if I should, I tried to see if there are available hotel rooms, but it was already too late to book or already fully booked. I decide to take my shower real quick, wondering if he could hear the shower and decide that he forgot something else to get in again. Nothing bad happens. I then go back to the bedroom, get dressed as fast as I can just in case, sit down and think. I decide that I will just stay for the night and I'll probably be less paranoid in the morning if I'm still alive. That's when I notice the chairs in the bedroom. There are two and one of them has ropes tied around the armrests. The chairs are in good shape and the rope is definitely not there to keep the armrests fixed to the chair, as they are just loose. To this day, I have no idea why they were there. I still think I should sleep there just for the night and try to use a chair to block the door handle in the bedroom, like in the movies. But guys, this only works in the movies. I try with both chairs, trying to pile them up, even trying to use the ropes one way or another. The handle can still go down enough to open the door easily. I think that, at least if I leave them in front of the door, I'll hear if someone tries to open it, but the door opens the other way, and in any case, I didn't know what I'd do, even if the noise woke me up. Again, I'm paranoid and anxious, but living alone, abroad, my motto is to never ever take risks for my own safety, as I'm usually the only one who can save myself. So better avoid any tricky situation. Doesn't mean I never go out, but I wouldn't get drunk around people I don't trust. And I would take a cab if I feel unsafe going home on my own after midnight. I now live in a city that's rather safe but had too many bad encounters. Unfortunately, nothing unusual for most women, not to be careful. So from an external point of view, this is a story about someone booking an Airbnb with good reviews, with a nice and friendly landlord who is just overly open because he likes to meet people. And the ropes are just a detail. But for my anxious and paranoid self, it's the premise for a horror story or thriller where you shout at the stupid and trusting victim to get away ASAP before the guy comes back. So I decided to call my brother, who came to pick me up around midnight for me to spend the rest of my stay at his place. TLDR. I left my Airbnb in the middle of the night because my Airbnb host entered my flat through a connecting door without warning, and after I saw ropes tied around the armrests of a chair in my bedroom. Came across an incredibly creepy family a while back. Okay, I never really post anything on Reddit, mostly just reading, so please excuse me if I do or say anything that isn't common courtesy here. In around 2018/19, I, 25F at the time was 18/19, was living in Nebraska, where I grew up. I lived in the largest city in Nebraska, but it was still essentially surrounded by corn and wheat fields. The city was expanding, so rich folks started building huge houses with giant properties on the edge of town as things proceeded to grow. All of that being said, I had a good friend whose parents' house was one of those big ones, right on the blurring line between the fields and the city. My friends and I were constantly hanging out at his place because it was fun. They had tons of property to ride 4x4s on, a hot tub, a huge living room for us to watch sports and have reality TV binge sessions, etc. Plus, his parents were super cool and we could drink out there as long as we stayed at the house. It was tons of fun, even though I am quite scared of the dark, so I would just not go outside after a certain time because there was little lighting and the nearest neighbor was about a mile away. I always felt a weird energy, driving to from his place if it was late at night, but never had anything happen until one night. The drive out there was a long, winding, two-way road that had thick trees on both sides, and you pass one of the city's largest cemeteries on the way. Barely any lighting, of course, besides the street lamps every once in a while, and very little traffic. It's all inherently a bit creepy, and I'll admit to having sped through this section of road many times to get through it as quickly as possible. This specific night was perfect spring weather, so I was driving with my windows down, listening to music, and it was around 10 p.m. I was coming around one of the curves in the road when I had to essentially slam my brakes on. Right in front of me in the middle of the road, maybe 50 yards away, was what looked like a family. Again, picture a completely pitch black road with thick forest on both sides and only my headlights to show what's in front of me. This was a family of three: a tall, slim woman, an average height-weight man, a child, short hair but couldn't tell the gender based on the clothing and couldn't see their face, maybe around 8 years old, and the mother was pushing a fucking stroller. Their clothes looked normal, Not tattered, but not nice. They also were not carrying any kind of light source, meaning before I arrived behind them in my car, they had been walking in the pitch black. They were all facing away from me, walking completely silent in the middle of the street the same direction I was heading. I had turned my music down to hear if they were speaking, had music playing, etc. They didn't. The hairs on my arms immediately stood up. I came to a stop in the road behind them, obviously, and just sat there for a moment to let them move. They seemed to be completely unaffected by me and didn't even turn their heads slightly, nor did they attempt to move out of my way. I literally thought I was going insane or that I was dreaming. It was so surreal. Before I really had time to fully process and register what I was seeing and how truly strange it was, they all at the same time stopped walking and very slowly turned to face my car. This scared the absolute shit out of me. I honestly didn't even give myself enough time to look at their faces as they turned. I immediately threw my car in reverse and sent it backwards for probably a full 20 seconds before flipping a U-turn, nearly running myself off the road and booking it the other direction. The only thing I remember noticing is that the stroller looked to be completely empty. This was the part that sticks in my mind the most. I've never felt terror like that in my life. I checked my rearview mirror probably 1,000 times before getting to a main road and never saw a glimpse of them. In fact, I never saw a glimpse of them ever again. I tried asking my friend and his family about it, only to essentially feel like I was insane because of the way they looked at me. Every time I tell this story, I get one of three reactions. They immediately think I'm fucking cuckoo, think I'm lying, or have had something sort of similar happen to them. I really don't care if no one believes me, honestly. It was and still is the creepiest thing to ever happen to me. I think about it all the time. It was either some weird-ass family trying to scare the shit out of someone, a distraction for an attempted robbery, assault, etc., or it was something more sinister. I'm going to tell myself for probably the rest of my life that it was the first option. All right, folks, that wraps up today's terrifying true Reddit stories. I hope you enjoyed these chilling tales. Each one was incredibly fascinating, and the fact that they're all true makes them even scarier, in my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments what type of stories you'd like to see in the future, what topics you'd like me to cover, and what you enjoyed or didn't enjoy about this video. Your feedback really helps me improve and create content you'll love. If you haven't already, please give this video a thumbs up. It makes a huge difference. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, and your support would mean the world to me. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you next time.